Tonight we're going to be talking about the acid-alkaline balance in the body. That's going to be our first lecture. And our second lecture we're going to be talking about exercise. And I've got some exciting news. There's a type of exercise that is more powerful than any other exercise, and it can take 12 minutes a day. Does that sound exciting? It's exciting news for us because we're all busy. Is that right? But first of all, I'm going to be looking at the acid-alkaline balance in the body. If you've ever had a swimming pool, you test the acid-alkaline balance in the water every morning, because if the water goes to acid, then the pipes corrode. And if the water goes to alkaline, algae grows on the pipes. Well, just as you need to be checking your acid-alkaline balance in the water, so too in your body fluids, because we are a lot of fluid. The fluid in our body is mostly blood or lymphatic fluid, and it has a reading on the acid-alkaline scale. So let's have a look at the acid-alkaline scale. The acid-alkaline scale is called a pH scale. It's called pH because pH means potential hydrogen. When you dissolve acid in a solution, it gives off hydrogen ions. When you dissolve alkaline in solution, it gives off hydroxy ions. So pH means potential hydroxy or potential hydrogen. Up one end we've got acid, and that's 0. The reading there is 0. On the alkaline end, the reading is 14. And in the middle, we've got neutral. And neutral is 7. So it's neither acid nor alkaline. Water should be neutral. Unfortunately, if it has chlorine or fluoride in it, it is not neutral. It is slightly acid. Blood has a reading on the pH scale. So blood's reading on the pH scale is between 7.35 and 7.4. All blood will be within that ratio, because if blood pH goes up to 8, that person will go into a coma and die of alkalosis. And if blood pH drops down to 7.22, that person will go into a coma and die of acidosis. So if it goes to 8, alkalosis, dying. If it goes to 7.22, then the person can die of acidosis. There can't be much variation there. And you and I don't have to worry about the pH of our blood, because there are two organs that are constantly keeping it within that range. One is your lungs. And this explains when you start exercising, you start breathing very deeply. And the reason you breathe very deeply is your muscles are burning more fuel, your muscles are burning more oxygen, and they're giving off a waste. And as that waste builds up in the blood can get a little acid. And so the brain says to the lungs, breathe deeply. Because when we breathe deeply, we're getting more oxygen, which alkalizes, and you're breathing out more carbon dioxide. And that's the waste from burning oxygen and glucose at the cellular level. So it is in that way that your lungs help to keep the pH of your balance as it should be. Because when we're exercising and we breathe deeply, we don't choose to breathe deeply, do we? We just automatically do. The other organ is your kidneys. Now, your kidneys are constantly balancing the pH of your blood, and they do it in quite a fascinating way. Let me show you. Here's the little filtering unit inside the kidneys, and we have 1 million of these filtering units in one kidney. So we've got approximately 2 million filtering units in our kidneys. There's the bladder. And what happens is the blood goes into the little filtering units, weaves through the filtering units where it is filtered, and then it comes out, and then it weaves around the tubules. So where in the kidney are these tubules? So here is the kidney, and these little filtering units are all on the edge. And the tubules basically weave down like this, and then there's the ureter. There's the ureter for the other kidney. There's the bladder. So that's how it happens. So how do the kidneys work in balancing the pH of your blood? Now let's say as the blood weaves through the filtering units, it is being monitored. So let's say the pH of the blood is getting too acid. It is right there that extra acid is dropped into the tubules to be urinated out. But if the pH of the blood is getting too alkaline, then it is here that extra acid is pulled out of the tubules back into the blood. So it is in that way that your kidneys are constantly monitoring and, if necessary, balancing the pH of your blood. In a 24-hour period, our kidneys, those little filtering units, they filter 1,800 litres of blood. Now, we don't have that much blood, but every 2 minutes, 1.2 litres is being filtered. What an amazing body we live in. Now, out of that 1,800 litres of blood, 180 litres of filtrate is being filtered out. But we don't urinate out 180 litres of filtrate a day, do we? Otherwise, we'd all be leaving this room every 5 minutes. We urinate out approximately 1.5 litres. So what happens to the 160 litres left? It's reabsorbed here. So it's in that reabsorption area that the pH of your blood is constantly being monitored. Quite a fascinating way. You'll never look at your kidneys the same again, will you? Not only do your kidneys filter your blood, your kidneys play a major role in balancing the pH of your blood. So we don't have to worry about the pH of our blood because our kidneys are constantly monitoring it and keeping it within the range that it should be. So the pH of the blood cannot change, but the pH of the cell can change. The pH of the cell should be approximately 6.5. Now that's very slightly acid, and there's a reason for that. The most acidic substance is sulfuric acid, and sulfuric acid travels at the speed of light. The most alkaline mineral is calcium, and on the scale of speed, calcium doesn't even move. And so slightly acid means the speed of uptake or the speed of all your little chemical reactions happening all through your body. You see, the gardener, he aims for a soil pH of approximately 6.4. The Bible says in Genesis 3:19, we come from dust, we go back to dust, we're dust. Interesting to note that the dust of the earth, the soil pH, and the cell pH is very similar. Disease thrives in a cell pH of 5.5. This is where disease thrives. This is where cancer thrives. This is where fungus thrives. But even though there's only the drop of 1 point, because it's a logarithmic scale, the drop of 1 point has a dramatic effect on the body. The drop of 1 point means 60% less oxygen available at the cellular level. No wonder disease thrives in that area. And remember what I said earlier in the week, cancer cannot live in the presence of oxygen. And so ensuring that your cellular pH isn't dropping down really acid also ensures that you've got adequate oxygen at the cellular level. And I'm going to show you how you can do that. But before we go there, Coca-Cola. It sits down here at about 2.6. It's a killer, and you'll be shocked to know this, but some people are drinking it. It's true. They cannot know. Many are sick through ignorance. So what affects this? What affects this? Probably what we eat affects it more than anything. But before I define the foods, let me show you a few things. There are 8 basic laws that govern the functioning of the human body. And the first law is pure air. When we're breathing in bad air, when we're breathing in mouldy air, when we're breathing in stale air, when we're breathing in chemicals, it can have an acid effect on the body because pure fresh air is higher in oxygen and oxygen is alkalizing. The second law is sunshine. Sunshine purifies the air And sunshine penetrates deep inside the body, and sunshine helps to cleanse the body, and it also helps the body to move the blood through. When the sun touches the skin, it actually moves the blood through. The sun is the healer in the sky. It's not the enemy in the sky. You can overvisit the sun, and if you do overvisit the sun, your skin is going to get burnt. But sun penetrates very, very deep into the body. Sunshine alkalizes. Number 3, the third law is temperance. Temperance means not taking anything into the body that will harm it and taking in moderation the good things. When I show you what causes an acid environment and an alkaline environment, we're going to be looking at the things that cause an acid environment. Number 4, the fourth law is rest. Sleeping between the hours of 9 p.m., except for this week, and 2 a.m. are where they're called the hours of power, because they're the hours that your body goes through rest and rejuvenation, and it's in those hours that the body tends to alkalinity. Number 5, the fifth law is exercise. You can overdo exercise, but not many people do that. Most people underdo exercise. And not exercising allows an acid condition to rise in the body. The sixth law is proper diet, and we're going to define the proper diet in a minute. There are foods that have an alkalizing effect, and there are foods that have an acid effect, so we're going to list those in a minute. Seventh law is use of water. Water alkalizes. I haven't met anyone that drinks too much water yet. Haven't met that person. Dr. Christopher in America, he said that there is a sign to test if you're drinking too much water. You put your head on the side, and if the water comes out your ears, you're drinking too much water. In other words, it's almost impossible to drink too much water. The eighth law is trust in divine power. So this law takes into consideration all the physical, not just physical, but all the mental and all the emotional and all the spiritual aspects of disease. And there are many writers today. I don't know if you've heard of Horst Mueller, Dr. Horst Mueller. He's a German doctor, and he's got some fantastic stuff on YouTube. And he shows how emotional and spiritual and mental problems can be manifested in physical illnesses. So keeping all of those laws ensures an alkaline environment in the body. Now, some of my family and friends break every law every day. And when every law is broken every day, lungs and kidneys are struggling. They're just managing to keep the pH of the blood where it should be, and then, oh dear, they have a cup of coffee or a can of Coke. Lungs and kidneys can hardly keep it up. So quickly, blood pH starts to drop. 7.35, 34, 33. Alarm bells go off, and the last resort buffer system is called on. The most alkaline mineral, calcium, is called out of its biggest storage house. Where's that? Bones. It's pulled out of the storage house into the blood in a form of calcium phosphate, and these crystals, when they get into the blood, they neutralize the growing acidity in the blood. 7.33, 34, 35, whew, we're safe, but at a cost. Now we've got these free calcium crystals floating through the blood. What's the body going to do with that? Oh, it'll dump it in the kidneys as kidney stones, gallbladder as gallstones, in the joints as arthritis, gout, on the bones as bone spurs. You've heard of a bone spur? It's a calcium deposit, and this is one of the main reasons why that happens. But you can get rid of a bone spur. And there's a very simple way that you can, and it's castor oil compresses. I've got some good news. Castor oil will break down a bone spur, but it won't break down your bone. In fact, medicine calls it synergism. And in Psalm 104 verse 14, the Bible says, God gave herbs for the service of man. I love that verse. The castor oil comes into your body and says, where would you like me? And it'll just go to the unnatural formations. When I say goes into your body, not through the mouth, that doesn't work. But compresses onto. So if you've got a bone spur, it'll break up the bone spur, but it will not break up your bone. It knows what to do. So you can do much in ensuring that your acid-alkaline is kept where it should be by adhering to those 8 laws of health. But what I'd like to look at now is the food. So we're going to make a list of foods that have an alkaline effect on the body. And we're going to make a list of foods that have an acid effect on the body. And the most alkaline food you can put into your body is the lemon. And you might say, no, no, no. It is acid. That's right. And it's acid where it should be. Okay, students, where's the only part of your body that should be acid? Stomach. Stomach. You've been listening. Stomach. In fact, if you want to boost digestion, take a squeeze of lemon in a little very hot water just before the meal, or put lemon. How nice to put lemon all over your salad, even on your fruit salad. But when lemon gets split up in the gastrointestinal tract and the minerals are separated, the minerals merge into the body and have an alkaline effect. You see, the minerals in lemon are the alkaline minerals. So that's sodium and potassium and magnesium and calcium and iron. So these are the most alkaline forming minerals. So lemon's acid where it should be and alkaline where it should be. The second most alkaline are dark green leafy vegetables. We should be eating some dark green leafy vegetables every day. And if you cook your dark green leafy vegetables, you do not lose your minerals. You do not lose your minerals when you cook them. You only lose your minerals if you throw away the water that you cook them in or that came out. Keep that water. That explains why green barley is popular, spirulina, wheatgrass, green smoothies. Because those dark green leafy vegetables are very high in the alkalizing minerals. Vegetables. Vegetables are high in the alkaline minerals. So let me show you a group of vegetables that for some people have an acid effect and some people they have an alkaline effect. It's the nightshade group of vegetables. So this is the tomato and the capsicum and eggplant. So all these foods come from the nightshade family, and potato. And this is not sweet potato, this is Irish potato or the English potato. Fijians call it the white man's potato. These are the nightshade group of vegetables, and for some people they have an acid effect, and for some people they have an alkaline effect. How do you know? Who'll tell you? Your body will tell you. There's a book called The Chilvers Diet by Dr. Norman Chilvers, and the whole book is on the nightshade and how it can trigger arthritis. So if someone has arthritis and they eat these foods, it can increase the inflammation. So if someone has arthritis, my suggestion is stop the nightshade. One lady said, but I love those nightshades. I said, well, how much do you love your arthritis? It's not forever. It's just until you conquered it. Now, some people say to me, well, I can have the yellow tomato, but not the red. Some people say, I can eat the cooked and not the raw. Some people say, I can eat the cooked and not the raw capsicum. Or I can eat the red and not the green, or the green and not... I love those stories. What are they stories of? They're stories of people who are listening to their body. If your body says no, don't do it. If it says yes, then do it. Because there's no two bodies the same. We don't serve capsicum at all at our health retreat because I find probably about a quarter of our guests cannot handle it. Now, if you love capsicum, you don't have arthritis, it doesn't repeat on you, eat it. It can be a very good food. That's where you're the doctor. You're the doctor there. If you have arthritis, stop it. When the arthritis goes, did you hear that? I've even seen 70-year-olds with swollen joints go back to normal. Isn't that good news? Working as a nurse, I never thought it was possible, but it is. We live in an amazing body. Psalm 139, verse 14, the psalmist says, I will praise you, for I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvellous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. Amazing body. It never ceases to amaze me, because the further you go in, the more astounding it is. If tomato is cooked with olive oil, it can be cooked with any oil, but I think olive oil is the nicest. If it's cooked with oil, it releases lycopene. And lycopene is a potent antioxidant used, well, it can have an effect to reduce the inflammation of the prostate gland. So every man over the age of 40 should be having a cooked tomato and olive oil dish at least 3 times a week. The Italians, the Lebanese, they knew what they were doing. You've heard of the slow cooking movement? Those tomato sauces need to be cooked nice and slow. Then it won't hurt the oil, and it'll help to release that lycopene. Another reason why fat is important, because you can't access your fat-soluble vitamins unless they're cooked with a little oil. I don't suggest putting oil in a pan and putting it on a high heat. You know, all the smoke, there's all your fatty acids gone up in smoke. What I do is I cook onion in its own juice, then put the tomatoes in. When all the liquid starts to come out, then you can put the oil in. Turn the heat very low and let it have a long, slow cook, and then you won't hurt your oil. Also, millet is an alkaline grain, and quinoa is an alkaline grain, and buckwheat is an alkaline grain. Also, amaranth. Amaranth is a grain that a lot of people are not that familiar with, but it's becoming popular because it's an alkaline grain and it's a gluten-free grain. All of these grains are also gluten-free. Spelt is an alkaline grain, as is kamut. Now let me take a moment to give you the wheat story, which is where spelt and kamut come from. The wheat that God made is called encorn. An encorn had a very fragile protein or gluten structure. Fragile means easily broken up. Easily broken up when it's ground, when it's cooked, when you chew it, and the enzymes in your gut. So it's easy to digest. It is not sure when, but it estimated a couple of thousand years ago, encorn did a wild hybrid with a field grass and came up with the Emma strain of wheat. Now this Emma strain of wheat, its structure is not as fragile, its protein or gluten structure. And that Emma wheat is the wheat that went through intensive crossbreeding in the 1950s to produce the hybridized wheat. The reason they put the plant through intensive crossbreeding was they wanted to produce a plant that had a high yield. So they produced a plant that only grows this high, it has a thick stem, so that has that heavy yield of grain. One farmer told me he gets 6 times more grain per acre with that wheat. So notice the timing. 1950s, they were playing with it. 1969, Dr. Norman Bourlag got a Nobel Prize for this hybridized wheat. So 1970, this wheat went worldwide. So by the 1990s, every pasta, cereal, bread, cake, biscuit, donut, what's it made out of? The hybridized wheat. But what was never addressed was the effect of that hybridized wheat on the gut of human beings. On Wednesday night, we had a look at how it changed the starch structure. and so is largely responsible for the diabetic epidemic we're seeing. But now I want to show you the effect of this hybridized wheat, what it had on the gluten or the protein structure. It created an incredibly complex protein or gluten structure. And it's almost only a cast iron gut that could break that down, and we don't have many of them anymore. Now, if that hybridized wheat is made into a sourdough bread, the culturing process breaks down the protein or the gluten in the grain so it is less complex. But it is still much more complex than it originally was. Spelt and kamut are wild hybrids of the Emma strain of wheat, so they have retained the fairly fragile structure. And if that spelt flour is made into a sourdough bread, it can bring that structure back to its original fragile structure. Of course, that's what sourdough bread is. It's a cultured bread. It breaks down the protein or the gluten in the grain. Now, this explains why we see so much gluten intolerance. Number one, the hybridized wheat. Number two, how many Aussies eat cereal and toast for breakfast, sandwich for lunch, pasta for tea, biscuits, cakes, mid-morning, mid-afternoon. It's just overload, total overload of one grain. And not only one grain, but the hybridized grain. There's more. In Australia today, wheat is grown in soil that has been fed with superphosphate. That locks up the minerals in the soil so it can't get into the plant. But there's more. Wheat in Australia today is grown with Roundup, glyphosate. Now, they've always said Roundup's one of the safer herbicides. Did you know recently they've changed their mind? It's toxic now. It is very toxic. In fact, the Sri Lankan government have banned glyphosate because so many rice farmers were dying of kidney disease. Even their children were getting kidney disease from the glyphosate. It also has a disastrous effects on the microbes in the gut, further contributing to so many gut problems we're seeing today. But there's more, and I mentioned this last night when we looked at the gut. Children are being fed food too young, further compromising the gut and their ability to break down this. So no wonder we see so much gluten intolerance. What are the symptoms of gluten intolerance? The most common symptoms of gluten intolerance are brain fog and bloating. And there are so many people that have that and just think it's age. If you've heard of poor old age, it gets blamed for so many things. Irritable bowel, constipation, psoriasis, eczema, so many things can be caused because of this hybridized wheat. We're looking at the most alkaline foods. Fruit. Fruit is alkaline, but it does have a question mark. So why does fruit have a question mark? If a person has a yeast presence in their body and they eat fruit, the sugar in the fruit feed the yeast. And as the yeast feeds on the sugar in the fruit, it gives off acetic acid, it gives off lactic acid, it gives off uric acid, and it gives off alcohol. So can you see what yeast does? It feathers its nest. It creates the very environment that it thrives in, which is the 5.5 environment. So how do you know you've got a yeast presence in the body? The tongue. The tongue should be pink from the tip to the back. Remember when doctors looked at your tongue? They don't look at tongues much now because there's not many good tongues. Now, if you can scrape off the white coating, that is not yeast, that is waste. And my book, Self-Heal by Design, it shows you how you can eliminate yeast from the body. So fruit has a question mark. Almonds. Almonds are called the king of all nuts. They're the alkaline nut, and they are also they're highest in iron, they're highest in protein, they're highest in calcium. Brazil nuts. Brazil nuts are phenomenally high in selenium. Now, selenium is a very important mineral that the body uses, the thyroid uses, to convert iodine into thyroxine. And you only need 5 Brazil nuts a day to get all the selenium that you need in a day. So look after your thyroid gland and have 5 Brazil nuts a day. Lima beans. Lima beans and lentils, whether they be green or brown or yellow or red, they're alkaline. And soy. And soy is only a problem if it's been genetically modified. A friend of mine did a thesis on soy. And people say to her all the time, tell us about soy. She said, it's really easy. God made it good, man mucked it up. Got that? So, the good news is that Australia still does not have genetically modified soybean. The soybean Australia grows, it's not genetically modified. But a lot of soy products are made from soybeans from America, which has been genetically modified. So you just have to read your labels. If you get organic, you can be assured it's not genetically modified. All your seeds have an alkaline effect. The most acid-forming substance you can put into your body is the pure crystallized acid that's been extracted from the sugarcane plant. Sugarcane is alkalizing because it's got a lot of minerals in it. But that acid that's been extracted has an acid effect on the body. Now, these foods here are high in the acid minerals, which is chlorine and phosphorus and sulfur. So these are the foods that are higher in the acid-forming minerals. Also, the hybridized wheat. The hybridization of the wheat created more of the acid minerals, and if that wheat is grown in superphosphate and watered with chlorinated water, can you see that boosts it up even more? Meat. Meat is acid forming. You might be familiar with the book China Study by Dr. Colin Campbell. He could switch cancer on and off by the amount of meat and animal products that he gave the rats. You see, when the body breaks down meat, it gives off a sulfur residue which is highly acidic. Aged cheese. What's the blue in the blue vein cheese? Have you ever visited a cheese factory and looked at the amount of mold that's on all the cheeses? Whereas your fresh cheeses like your feta, your cottage, they don't have that mold factor, so they're more on a pH of 7. But you really have to address the state of the cows they even came from. Caffeine, all your caffeine foods and drinks have an acid effect. Alcohol has an acid effect, though it's not a food. Tobacco's not a food, but it has an acid effect on the body. All your other grains, other than the list on the alkaline side, all your other legumes, other than lima, lentil and soy, all your other nuts, other than your almonds and Brazil, have an acid effect. Now, to maintain this 6.5 cellular environment, we should be having 70 to 80% alkaline-forming foods and 20 to 30% acid-forming foods. That ratio will maintain this 6.5 environment at the cellular level. Now, the easiest way to do that is to eat more vegetables, more greens. Start exploring the other grains. One lady said, oh no, don't tell me walnuts are on this side. I love walnuts. I said, yeah, but you need a little walnuts. It doesn't mean they're out. And I'm sure you're not surprised to hear me say that the 20 to 30% should come from here. Have you met some sick vegetarians? I have. Where do the sick vegetarians live? Grain, sugar, hybridized wheat. Is that right? They just overdo it. How many Aussies would be doing the 90 acid, 10 alkaline? Cereal and toast for breakfast, sandwiches for lunch, pasta for tea, biscuits, cakes, mid-morning, mid-afternoon. That's almost 100% acid. The easiest way to do it is just to eat more vegetables, more greens, pursuing the other grains. That's the easiest way to do it. Are you familiar with the hydrangea plant? The hydrangea plant is a big bush and it has huge flowers, and each flower is made up of a whole lot of little flowers. And sometimes you'll see a hydrangea plant and all the flowers are pink. Sometimes you'll see a hydrangea plant and all the flowers are deep magenta pink. And sometimes you'll see a hydrangea plant and all the flowers are purple. Sometimes you'll see a hydrangea plant and all the flowers are blue. They're not different types of hydrangea plant. The gardener plays with the pH of the soil because different pHs of the soil produce different coloured flowers. So just as the gardener plays with the pH of the soil, you can play with the pH of your cell, to produce different health or sickness statuses in the human body. And as you can see, but when I first started the lecture, keeping these 8 laws of health, targeting on a more alkaline diet, that is a recipe for keeping the body in good working order. Many are sick through ignorance. And I see they've got a little book up the back called The Ministry of Healing, one of my favourite books. And there's a chapter in there called The Physician, the Educator. In fact, did you know that the word doctor means teacher? Teaching. And in this book it says, let the physicians teach the people that restorative power lies not in drugs, but in nature. The only hope of better things is the education of the people in right principles. I believe everyone should be their own doctor. So as your own doctor, you now should be your own teacher, is that right? And the best form of education is experimental education. What's experimental education? Doing it. What's the old Aussie saying? If you're on a good thing, stick to it. The Bible says in 1 Thessalonians 5:21, prove all things and hold fast to that which is good. It's old English. It means if it works, do it. People say, Barbara, do you ever step sideways in your diet? I say, why would I? Why would I? I feel so good eating like this. My mind is clear. I sleep well. Isn't that the result? And if the body starts protesting, you've got to listen and you've got to make adjustments. And sometimes the body will say, nah, don't do that again. And sometimes the body will go, oh, I like that. So you listen to it. And the good news is tomorrow morning at 9:30, I'm going to show you how you can rewire your brain. Do you know the research is showing that you can be rewiring your brain right up until the day you die? Isn't that good news? I'm going to give everyone a break now. And when we come back, we're going to look at the importance of exercise.